So we're in the office of Pablo, and who's in here with you guys? Let's see. Let's start over here.
Hey, I'm Karsten Januszewski.
And what do you do at Microsoft?
I'm over on the evangelist team.
And that means you're a really smart guy, right?
Absolutely.
And who are we? Introduce us to everybody else here.
We are visiting with the Avalon team. We're over in Building 10. So we have Mr. Relier over here. If I pronounced it correctly. Perfect. Rob. We've got Reek. Cohen.
Hi.
And Pablo. What do you guys do?
How's it going? So I'm the group program manager for Avalon that deals mainly with things like the graphics, the core, our tree structure, and sort of the basic of XAML, printing, and so on.
I'm a lead program manager on Avalon. I'm responsible for all of our release management, kind of coordinating how we get the CTP releases out the door, and hopefully beta 1 here shortly. I'm also responsible for kind of trying to get external partners and internal partners up and building on top of Avalon.
Now, what you said CTP. What is CTP?
CTP is our community technology previews. Even though we argue incessantly about what the C and the T and the P, I've seen 5 different versions of whether it's a community technology preview, a community tech preview. We change our documentation on it about 3 times in the week before we ship it, just to make sure everybody's using the same terminology. But this is, and I think all the demos that we're going to show today is on the release that we just made available last week. So I don't know when this will go live in mid-March, and actually is going to be going live to the general public tomorrow. So we're pretty excited to be able to show some of the latest bits of Avalon.
Wow. And so where can you get the bits?
You should be able to go up to MSDN. I believe the Longhorn Dev Center is the best place to go. So msdn.microsoft.com/Longhorn, and there's plenty of links up there. And all 3 of us, I know, troll the news groups on a regular basis. There's a WinFX Avalon news group. There's a pointer up there as well. We follow those things probably a little bit too much. I mean, I got email from you on it, at 2 in the morning the other day about why that was up there, or what we had screwed up in one of the SDK articles. We try to get them fixed as quick as possible. We're trying to get releases out there so that people can give us feedback as fast as possible. It's fun.
And I'm a program manager. I work on XAML and the programming model in general across Avalon.
He has a great blog, too, if you haven't been to Rob's blog.
Yeah, we'll link to... Do all 3 of you guys have blogs, or just...
I don't have one.
Yeah, Pablo's like, I don't know.
But I've been talking about starting a blog for about a year now, so eventually it might get there. But
it's funny the way that works. We pretty much just, as soon as we release new public bits, it's exciting because we get to go ahead and start talking about the new things there. So you'll see more blog posts soon.
The things we talked about in terms of both making the builds available, having the blogs, having the news group participation is actually very interesting, because it's a big shift from, I've been at Microsoft for 8 years, it's a big shift to how we ship products before. If we go back a year and a half, we had a PDC, we gave out a build so people could try it out. We followed that up with a build roughly a year ago for WinHack. And then in October, November, we had a CTP, and now we have another one. It's just a much higher level of openness, both in terms of giving people early access to bits, and some people complain that we give too much access, but I'd rather earn that side. You can ignore the CTP build if it doesn't solve a problem or it's not interesting for you. But giving access to the bits, participating on the news groups, all 3 of us probably post several times a week, as well as Rob and a bunch of other folks have blogs where we put a lot of interesting information.
When I was over in your office, this is your office, right?
Yes.
So we're in your office.
The mess is mine.
You said this was one of the, up on your whiteboard, is one of the original Avalon fans. Can you tell us a little bit about where Avalon came from?
Yeah, so this part right here is probably the oldest part of my whiteboard, and this is probably about 4.5 years ago, when we're looking at the key parts of having a container, having things that cover both the web and Windows, and being able to provide an experience that gives you the best of the web and the best of Windows. Early discussions about whether we should use HTML or not, and so on. So yeah, this is one of the earliest discussions we had.
How do you avoid erasing a piece of your whiteboard for 4.5
I just use all the other interfaces that we have.
I can't keep mine up.
You should show that one there. That's more messy.
I won't even go there. Then we have to have a technical discussion.
he used to use the thick markers. Now he uses just the
The
thin
thin
markers.
markers.
It's the only place that he can get, way he can get anything on that board.
Yep.
What is the vision of Avalon? What is Avalon for somebody like me who really doesn't know what it is and is just starting to hear about it?
In many ways, you can think of it as a very simple way is the next platform for building Windows applications. So that's just very simple idea. If you look at things like GDI, user, MFC, those are technologies that are about 20 years old now. So we want to provide a platform that will carry us forward for the next 10, 15, 20 years. Beyond that simple level, we also look at the evolution of what happened on both the desktop and the web. And one of the trends we notice is this integration between content, UI, and documents. And we want to make sure that we provide the same platform that can cover all those three. In many ways today, when you look at the programming model for doing different things on Windows, you end up with these different islands of programming model, where I may learn something for Direct 3D, but that doesn't translate to GDI. Or I may learn something for GDI that doesn't translate for doing UI. And really the only way to doing documents today on Windows is using HTML. And that's, again, a different programming model, a different set of tools, a different set of developer experience. Now we're just going to go through one developer experience, a consistent set of tools, a consistent set of programming model that should make people more productive and really move them forward on the web, on Windows, and what they can do.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd add on that, Pablo, is that really one of the big things that we're trying to look at here is how do we create much better user experiences? People have taken the technology that's available today in amazing ways, but when we look at trying to create higher fidelity user experiences that use some of the new hardware that's coming available, and like widescreen monitors, higher, doing pixel independent, high DPI stuff, some of the color stuff that's becoming available. Some of the old platforms really just don't have the level of support. So we think that Avalon, by creating that new level of platform, can really do that. Hopefully for the next, if it does it for the next 20 years, we'll have jobs for a little while.
And we made a couple of key bets here. One of them being betting on the CLR. So the majority of APIs that we expose are based on managed code, which is a bet that's proving true with the advances that we've seen on .NET 1.1. And another big bet that we took was on hardware.
Yeah.
When we started, Rob would remember this, when we started 4.5 years ago, we were always, hoping that the hardware will catch up with what we thought it would be in 2005 and 2006. And that actually has come true. The hardware folks, the OEMs, the IHVs, have delivered magnificently on hardware performance, both in terms of just features and cost. So those were totally the right bets to make, and they're proving worth it.
Great.
Did you have any questions?
Just one thing that you mentioned with this more openness that you see reflected with CTPs. Do you think that's changed the development of the product itself?
Heck yeah.
I mean,
heck yeah. I mean, I take a look at it and say we have distinct exit criteria to make sure that we fix bugs that are reported by people externally. I think it's the feedback that we got from getting the original releases that was the primary motivating factor for us to move down to XP. Yeah. I mean, from our perspective, that was I went off and got married when we made that decision and left for a month and came back and realized that our entire ship vehicle had kind of changed. And it was all we had been having months of discussion about how do we do that based on huge amounts of feedback that we got from the community, that we got from various early adopter partners. It's a big thing, and I'm actually super psyched at how much easier it's going to be for us to be able to get customer feedback with this release, because we're going to start taking advantage of Ladybug. So MSDN has Ladybug, which is I guess it's lab.msdn.microsoft.com/feedback. I think I got that right.
It's the MSDN Product Feedback Center.
Yeah, the MSDN Product Feedback Center.
The code names for everything Microsoft are always cooler than the real name.
No, the coolest thing is actually when you look at the code names and their internal websites, and they have a list of 50 facts about ladybugs, the creatures that you never knew. And you sit there and go, someone spent way too much. And you know it was not done during working hours. That is definitely work that was done at some point late at night.
So what kind of boring product name are you guys going to give Avalon when it gets shipped?
We're all arguing to keep Avalon, but I don't think that we get much say in it, right? No. I mean, we get into arguments about what we call each of the releases, like whether, what word comes first, and then, is it the Avalon and Indigo March CTP? Well, yeah, that's alphabetical, but it's the first time we're releasing Indigo, so should it be the Indigo and Avalon? And then the previous one was the WinFX CTP, so is this going to confuse people that we change the name? In the end run, we let the marketing people kind of deal with that, and we try to work on creating the product. But like using Ladybug for this CTP, we're super psyched, because that means that as people find issues, as people rate issues, we're going to see it. The amount of time that we probably spend in Product Studio, our internal bug database, on a daily basis is growing as we get closer to ship time. And being able to see direct customer feedback going straight into that to everybody on the Avalon team. I mean, people are going to see that feedback and the comments that people have down to, the developer that understands, how to do appropriate kerning and clear type rendering, all the way up to our general manager and VP. So everybody has access and instant access to that information. And we're super excited about how it's going to change.
One thing that's super useful as folks provide feedback on a news group is when they have very specific user scenarios or things they're trying to do, and then list their problems. Either, my perf is not what I wanted for this case, here's 1,000 things that I'm trying to do and the perf is not there, or trying to do data binding is too complicated, or trying to draw shapes through visuals, you guys don't really have documentation for it. So the more specific the feedback that we get, the better we're able to react. And we have, so far, with a lot of changes that we made for the CTP in terms of API cleanup for layout, for example. There's a whole new, we redid the architecture for layout for the CTP. So storyboards is another one where we got feedback from external developers. So the more clear and to the point that people can make the feedback on news groups, the greater the chances that they'll see that reflected in the next CTP or later CTPs and that. Even down to the features. I know a lot of people are disappointed that they're not seeing effects, media, and printing in this CTP, but that will come in a future CTP. And just getting the feedback that these are features that people want to use, or these are features that people are looking for, even help us prioritize and load balance the work that we do.
Heck, I was in the work team meeting the other day when some of those feature teams are using the posts that they see on the news groups to argue for why they need to be in the next one, even though their quality might not be at the level that we want them to be. Yeah. But they're sitting there going, but there's so many people out there that want this stuff right now.
It's not just the news groups too. The blogs. Rod Paddock is a VB blogger who said, "Hey, where's with events?" and it helps remind us that we've missed some things and we need to go ahead and make sure we have great support. So we worked with the VB team to figure out, well, how do we do this the right way, and we're going to go ahead and get that in, not the March CTP, but we hope it's in the next CTP, and we got it working internally.
What's the coolest thing in Avalon? I mean, if you had an MVP here who is a developer, what would be the thing you would show him?
The fact that you have all of it. I think that the sum of the parts is greater than the total. We have so much functionality, but also so much functionality that's able to play together. This is something that when I talk to customers all the time, I highlight, which is once you learn to do something for data binding, for example, or for storyboards, styling, you're able to leverage that when you're doing 2D graphics, when you're doing 3D. So you're able to take the knowledge that you gain and leverage across many different areas, many different segments. To try to take just one part of Avalon, sometimes I see discussion on the web about Avalon, the graphics part of it, and SVG, or Avalon and the graphics part of it, and GDI Plus or GDI, and just taking one part in isolation really does a disservice to the overall platform and to the benefits that all developers will get, as opposed to developers that are just specialized in a certain technology or certain focus area.
I'm a little biased. I'd have to say XAML, but truly, as third parties come out with tools, and as we come out with better and better tools, you'll see less and less of it. But I'm excited by the foundation we have of .NET programming and XML as a language. Although over time, we'll see how many people need to know all about those details.
So should we switch to actually show things running?
Yes.
Because we've done a lot of talking. Actually, we have cool stuff to show.
Yeah, we've got a meeting in like 20 minutes,
Yep.
so we should
All right.
let's make it happen.
Well, cool. So we were going to start with.
Let me hold on just a second here. Let me adjust my tripod.
All right.
Okay.
So we're just going to start by showing you, once you've installed the March GTP by going to the Longhorn Dev Center, how you could go ahead and what you'd have installed. So you install the Visual Studio and Avalon and the WinFX SDK, and at the end of that, you end up with a build of Visual Studio. And you can go ahead and I'll just give a brief tour of a few features here. You can go in, say File, New Project, and you'll notice we've got some new features that aren't inside of Visual Studio 2005 that we've added with our installations here. So like we've got the old Windows projects here, Windows applications, console applications, etc. We currently have another tab here for all the Avalon applications. And we've got a few different types. We've got an application, a browser application, or a navigation application. And we're able to go ahead and build a typical, the Avalon application is the typical application that just runs on your machine like Notepad or other things like that. And the browser application runs in the browser and has seamless integration there. And the navigation application is an application that has some built-in Chrome, a forward and a back and forward, back and forward button to go ahead and do navigation. And we also have, I don't think on this machine, we don't have the Visual Basic on this machine, but we also have Visual Basic template support for those same things. I was going to go ahead and just build a quick Avalon navigation app.
Say Avalon 10 times faster.
Please don't make me do that.
Not on a Monday. You can't do that on a Monday.
I wanted to show a few things off that we've done inside of Visual Studio here. First of all, we have one thing you'll notice is that we have, when you go ahead and build an Avalon navigation application, you end up having a few different files. So myapp.xaml, the code behind for that, we call that myapp.xaml.cs. We've got page1.xaml, and you have a code behind file for that as well. To start this application, we're opened up in this page, and we have a couple new things. For those of you who've been using Avalon before, a lot of you gave feedback about well, what is Avalon, what is XAML, what are the differences, and we're trying to differentiate that even in the product now. We've gone ahead and we've made it so that the namespace that used to be XAML 2003 is now Avalon 2005. And we've made it so that the language-specific namespace is schemas.microsoft.com/winfx XAML 2005. So anything that's basically anything that you use, like 3D objects or buttons or paragraphs or other things like that, those are all Avalon classes. We've provided a great class library that provides that great platform for you to build lots of great solutions. And you go ahead and use Avalon when you want to go ahead and use any of those things. And then there's a few things where you need to go ahead and choose to use the XAML namespace. But XAML's really about two things. One, using XML to define a tree of objects. And so you can go ahead and use you build documents, build UI, build graphic content. And you can also then go ahead and use XAML and add an event model behind it. So you want to go ahead and react to users' events. And so you've got this tree of objects, you've got this event-driven model that you're able to do, and you tie into your Visual Basic or your C# code or other languages.
So one of the things then is, so you don't have to use Avalon objects in XAML. XAML can persist any kind of object. Is that correct?
Sure. We've got a few things that we require in order to go ahead and mention it, to use a tag that you want to use in XAML. All you need to be is a class in CLR, a CLR class that has a default constructor and has public properties that you can set. So you can go ahead and build third-party components that way that build on top of the Avalon framework, or you could go ahead and build any types of other objects you want to do.
So anything in the base class library that meets that criteria, you can also fire up in XAML.
Yeah, I mean,
like system.string or...
Yeah, and I think that Chris and Don did an example on MSDN before where they showed a console application all done with XAML. That's the word I was looking for. XAML. So I mean,
Right.
you can do it with just about anything.
So I was going to actually show you a designer tool here. Why don't we launch up Microsoft Paint? And let me resize this.
It's the only
I'd like to point out
It's only
that the graphic
tool-
designers on our team use better tools than that, I think.
But I just wanted to illustrate one of the features that's relatively new to Avalon. I was going to go ahead and just build a page here of UI, and I'm going to build a little messenger client. So I'll go ahead and prototype my UI here. I'm going to go ahead and put the messages that people send up here. It's going to have a little scroll bar. I'm going to go ahead and put a text box in here. And then I'm going to want to put a send button here. And so I'm going to go ahead and build an Avalon page that builds a messenger UI, just build the basics and show a few concepts.
Okay.
Now, we're going to use a layout here called grid. And grid is great for building UI. You can go ahead and divide divide a screen, whether it's a window or a page, into a number of different rows and columns, and you get auto resizing and you get the right behavior you want when you go ahead and use that. So I'll go ahead and just mock up how I'm going to go ahead and do that. I basically want these margins on the left to be in one column. Then I want the text box over here to be another column. I've got the button there. So I've got 4 different columns maybe, and I've got a couple rows. I'll go ahead and draw across there. So pretty much this is my plan. Now, ideally, you'd be able to go to Save As XAML here, but that's not quite working yet, is it?
Is this a hint of a future product coming?
Well, hopefully there are third-party tools coming now already, and while you won't see MS Paint being able to do this anytime soon, hopefully a lot of people will be able to create XAML, whether it's graphics, UI, documents. We'd love to see that. But
Okay.
so we're just mocking up what we want to go ahead and build the send dialog. So we'll switch back to Visual Studio, and of course we'll type this all in by hand now. And we'll talk about a few things that. A few concepts here. First of all, there's
So Rob, long term, we don't expect people to be typing XML in an editor, right?
Clearly.
Long term, we would like people to have visual tools,
Right.
But for early adopters, right now, they have to do the XAML by hand thing.
right. So we'll start by actually typing in grid.row definitions, and grid.row definitions is an example of what we're now calling a property element. So what we're doing is we're setting a property on the grid, and we're going to add to that row definitions collection a bunch of row definitions. So I'm going to go ahead and just say, well, I wanted five row definitions, so I'll go ahead and paste in 5 rows. And then I'm also going to go ahead and add a bunch of columns here. I'm going to go ahead and do some column definitions. And now you'll notice we have basic IntelliSense working here that's somewhat context sensitive. Inside of the current builds here, we're using the XML editor, and we've built a schema, an Avalon schema, that has a pretty good idea of what's available where, but it's certainly not perfect yet. You'll get false positives, false negatives. So go ahead and try to compile, see if it works. But for now, it should provide useful information for people. I'm going to go ahead and add a bunch of column definitions here. We said we wanted 4 columns, so I'll just go ahead and paste those 4 things. And then what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to put in a list box up at the top. So we'll go ahead and do a list box. And we're going to also put a text box in. And then we're going to put a button. Now, we need to go ahead and assign to those different controls where they go inside of the grid above. So we'll go ahead and do grid.row. We'll put the list box in the first row. It starts with 0, so this is actually row 1. We'll also add it in column 1. And then we'll go ahead and make it span. And actually, this is a good example of the IntelliSense not working. We'll make it span 2 different columns. So column span wasn't suggested there, and it was underlined, but I know it's right. So.
You can just kick me out of the way if I'm
Okay. We'll go ahead and put the text box in the 3rd row. Let's just go back and check our MS Paint diagram here. So yeah, the text box is in 3rd row, and the column 1, and then the button's going to be in column 2. So let's go ahead and do that. So we say grid.row equals 3, and grid.column equals 2. Now you might wonder why we have this. The syntax, I'm sorry, column 1. You might wonder why we have this syntax here with the period inside of it. Let's go ahead and explain that. We wanted to build an extensible layout system, and so you noticed up here, we wanted to make it so that all of our buttons and controls were able to work inside of anybody's panel, anybody's layout that they invented. And now in HTML days, what we had hundreds of properties on every element, and you never knew which one was going to work at any one time. You'd set one, you'd see if it worked, and you may or may not remove the code if it actually did or didn't work. Here, what we're trying to do is we're trying to make it so that if there's some layout technology like a grid or a table or something like that that needs some information to lay out a control, we're trying to go ahead and have it define its own property. And then you just go ahead and use this attached property down below saying, well, the grid has defined a row property. I'd like to set that here. And this means that we have a bunch of properties that, that no longer are no-ops on a lot of our controls. So I'm going to finish one thing here. I'm going to go ahead and set this row of the button to be grid.row equals 3 and grid.column. And just to reiterate, like Pablo said, we're clearly not expecting you all to type these in by hand. We're going to turn on one property on the grid just so we can see what's happening here. We'll turn show grid lines equal true. And here you can just see that's one of the show grid lines attribute has true and false as acceptable values, and you get some IntelliSense here inside of the XML editor. Let's go ahead and run this. You press F5, Control F5, either one of those to go ahead and launch.
It's funny that you went for a lot of advanced concepts in there, and you were just typing them, like attached properties. You were putting properties about grid on elements that were not grids, like the button and the text input field. But once people learn about them, it's just second nature. But sorry, go ahead.
So here,
Keep doing that.
Here, what you see is just I turned show grid lines on the grid, and this is the list box. It doesn't have a color. I'll add a color in a minute. This is our text box. It's not really zoomed right now, and this is our send button. So I forgot to put the word send in there. You also notice that the margins and things like that are just laid out pretty badly here. So let's go ahead and close this and go back.
Do you think that's because you used paint?
Yeah, it probably is. Once they add that save as XAML feature, that'll do it. So we'll do a couple things. Inside that list box, we'll go ahead and add a color for that. We'll say background equals, and so Chris Anderson did this the other day, and I kind of like it, so I'll steal it. He did bad food. This is this is a hex string that has RGB and some opacity there. But I'll go pick a color, and then I'm also going to go ahead and I'm going to give those rows and columns different heights and widths. So the rows, the first, if we go back to MS Paint, the first row 0, row 2, and row 4, really I wanted to have a fixed size. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and set those heights of those things to be 0.5 inches. And I'm mistyping there a little bit, but we'll go ahead and set 0.5 inches.
Sorry, I've had too much coffee today, so I'm making my readers a little shaky.
Okay. So we're going to go ahead and set those things as...
It's a Monday.
And another powerful concept that we just glazed over there is the resolution independence, where the units that he's giving are all physical units as opposed to pixels.
Right. So we'll go ahead and translate inches into 96 device-independent pixels effectively. And so now we've got our...
Now wait a second. Bill Hill has a 200 DPI monitor on his desk, so it'll be independent. It'll work just fine on his.
Right. It's going to go ahead and be great resolution regardless of how dense your display is.
On Bill Hill's monitor, it'll be a ½ inch on this laptop, which I think we set the resolution so that you could see it on the screen, and it'll be the same on no matter where you go.
And even more interesting, it'll be ½ an inch when we print. Later on, at a future time, we should talk about printing. We're not going to have time today, but we should definitely talk about that later on.
So we'll go ahead and run this, and we'll see we fixed a few things. We've got our color here now. We've got the sizing. I go ahead and resize. Now we've got one problem here. We want this button, the content of this button first. We've got to put send in here as well. And then we want it also to change the sizing of this. We really don't want this row to take that much space. So what we'll do is we'll just add content to the button here. We'll make it say send. And then what we want to do is we want to make these rows auto size. One of the important concepts of Avalon layout is that we're able to go ahead and auto fit. Basically, all the controls know how they should be sized. They know what their content is, and they'll go ahead and size appropriately. So when you go ahead and globalize an application, you're able to just change the words in your buttons, and things will lay out appropriately. So we hope that you don't hard code pixel values, etc., and we take that away from you. But we hope you're going to be able to build great globalized applications. So I set the row and the column to auto size and just take the size of the button. We'll go ahead and run now.
The auto sizing for localization is a big deal for developers in terms of taking their applications to German or to other languages where the strings end up being 20-30% longer. They end up having to go and tweak the UI and just redo all their pixel values, and that's no longer necessary with the changes that we made in the platform.
Right. So here it is. We would turn the show grid lines off. We'd make the send button actually do something. We'd wire it up to Indigo and send the message to another chat partner. But this just gives you a peek at some XAML code and some of the properties inside of it. And I don't know. Do you want me to go in and add a click handler here, or have you seen that enough? Okay. I mean, we'll go add. We go ahead and add a click attribute to the button, and we go ahead and say the name of an event handler. We'll say click equals send message, and then we'll go to the code behind file, page1.xaml.cs. Because we don't have fantastic tool support here yet, we'll go ahead and uncomment an event handler here, and we'll go ahead and call it send message. And now what we're going to do is we want to go ahead and add something to the list box as soon as we go ahead and click on that button. So let's not worry about actually sending the message. Let's add to the list box, and we'll go ahead and show that. We'll go back to page1.xaml.cs. In order to refer to this list box, I'm going to need to go ahead and put an ID on it. So I'll just go ahead and say list box is messages. The ID is messages. And now in my code behind file, I'll be able to go ahead and say messages period. But this is just wanted to illustrate a problem in current builds and current tools. If you go ahead and put an ID on elements and then you want to go ahead and have IntelliSense support it, you actually need to go ahead and compile once. So I'll go ahead and just compile once. Control-Shift-B will do that.
Okay.
And it clearly didn't like this bit of code here that was partially there. But now I can go ahead and say messages. Should be able to type in messages, period. And messages showed up in that list. And now I can go ahead and say messages.items.add. And I'll go ahead and say hello world, and I'll add an item. We'll go ahead and see if this works. We click on send, and there we go. We've got hello world. And that's a little walkthrough through VS and the March CTP.
That's dramatically easier than other development methodologies, isn't it? And certainly gives a much richer result, doesn't it?
Well, let me ask you this. So why is grid better than an HTML table? I mean, a lot of this feels like an HTML tables, right? So let me throw that one at you.
Sure. Well, HTML tables were used a lot for layout, but they weren't really designed for layout. They were used for rows and columns full of data. Grid is designed for UI layout, and it's designed for resizing, and so it's just one of the toolboxes in the set of layouts that you have when you go ahead and build things. So we've got an extensible system with a great set of layouts. Sometimes you're going to want to use flow layouts, sometimes you're going to want to use tables, sometimes you're going to want to use grid for resizable things. You go ahead and pick them, and if you don't like what we have, you go build one or buy one and go use it. So our layout system's flexible. This is just something that's going to be commonly used in UI, and this just shows you the beginning of what you can go build.
Okay. Should we show Reeks? Pass the mic to Arik.
Sure, I'll go on. Hey, Rob, can I sit down?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, so you'll see Arik's demos are clearly more than 10 minutes of coding in VS.
Let me get it in there.
Or, in other words, I'd actually argue it's more than the 10 minutes of coding in VS. It's more than the 10 minutes or 10 seconds in Paint as far as your graphics program. So I'm going to do a quick demo for you on an application that basically uses Amazon's web services and brings back the data in some interesting ways, and shows a little bit of the power of Avalon in order to make that happen. So it's a little app that we call Media Mania here. A little bit more visually polished than your MS Paint work. Sorry, Rob. But let me start off with the drilling into the top corner here. I'm going to zoom in.
Wait.
I've got a little zoom button in here.
Who's zooming?
I'm zooming. Sorry, I don't think that normally you get zoom behavior quite that built into the app.
And when you zoom in,
Yeah, it gets
existing.
Yeah, it gets even worse, right? Or it gets even more.
It didn't get jaggedy.
Yeah, it did not get jaggedy. So one of the things that we have done with Avalon is we have a complete vector graphics-based system. So Windows as a whole, and for all of your graphics and all of your text, going through a vector graphics-based system really adds a lot. So if you take a look at the item on the right here, we've also got some nice little glow effects that get added when you go over it. The one on the right is actually using a bitmap image on the icon. So, hey, it looks a little bit blurry. We're admittedly zoomed in probably a lot further than anybody, any normal user or a user that is not accessibility impaired would use. But you'll take a look. The text still looks really good over here. It's movies, but over here music looks really nice. But the other thing is, this is just a standard button that has been styled by one of the designers on our team, doing kind of all the XAML by hand for this. And when I actually hover over here, you actually take a look. We've actually got a full 3D model inside there. So when I click on the button, I actually get a full CD kind of hovering in space, and then as I move out, you get a nice, really rich experience on that.
So just like Rob was going through very advanced and powerful concepts and just using them, this is highlighting something called composition, where you can take any UI element and you can put any other type of element inside of it. So in this case, a button, for example, contains several graphic elements, plus the 3D, plus the text, plus there is a panel to lay out those things inside of the button.
Yep.
Which is one of the key characteristics. Going back to what we were saying before, which part of Avalon is more interesting or will highlight the most. It's all of it together that really adds the value.
Now, this little rollover effect.
Yep.
How many graphic images? If I looked at the hard drive, is this?
There's one image here.
PNG or?
There's one. Actually, there's two PNGs here. There's one for the case itself, and then there's one for the CD image. The rest is all vector graphics built on top of it. They're applied as a material on your 3D mesh here, and that was all done within the markup by the designer. No code written behind in order to make that happen.
So how much code?
This is zero lines of C# or VB code. It's once you start talking animations and that I'd say, what is it, about 50 lines of XAML, I think it is. It's something like that. But this was actually originally done by one of the designers on my team, Nathan Dunlop. He's got a blog as well. He does a lot of the cool demos that you see for Avalon. He was actually just kind of playing around in XAMLpad, which is one of the new tools that's available with the March CTP, which lets you just type in some XAML and immediately see the results of it. And he came running into, was it my office or your office? I don't remember. His office is closer to Nathan's than mine. So he came in and running and, hey, take a look at what I was able to pull together with no lines of code behind.
And that was enabled by a new feature that we have in the CTP, which is event triggers.
Yep.
So event triggers on the storyboards. If you want to show the CD again, you'll notice that when he goes over things, something happens. And when he clicks, something else happens. All that is driven by event triggers. So there's really no code, which really makes it useful for people to be able to use multiple tools in their development process. Because you're able to describe things in XAML, bring it into one tool, tweak or add some elements to it, bring it to another tool, add more elements or modify it, and then finally bring it into Visual Studio, for example, and just compile your application. So XAML provides a subtract that you're able to move things from tool to tool to tool and have a very rich ecosystem of tools and workflow for developers and designers.
How is the development process going to change because of this? I mean, this looks like a far more art-heavy process than Win32 app or a VB6 app.
Well, I mean, you've seen there are Win32 apps and even some VB apps that really go and stress in this way, but they really take a huge amount of effort to build right now. The problem that you have right now is that pretty much anytime you want to go change any of these visuals and that, you're going and change it. You have to go find a developer to go write that code. Me as a program manager, I've been at Microsoft also coming up on 9 years now. And the amount of times I've worked with a designer and created a graphic and handed it to my dev who said, no, can't do that, or it's too hard, or yeah, I can do that. How many other features are you going to cut in order to make it so that I can get that done? Is huge. So the big difference here is we've got a good abstraction. There is really an abstraction between the logic of the application in the back end and the visual appearance of it. So I think that there's definitely more jobs for graphic designers that will be using the tools that will become available to really do rich, stylized applications that are where it was what we used to call, or what we still call, battleship gray kind of internal applications, where things look very consistent. And there's a lot of times where the consistent look and feel makes sense. There's also times where it makes sense to have a little bit of fun and to be able to have a brand and to really build that brand and build a great visual, rich, immersive experience. So I think that there's going to be a lot more work for some designers out there, and developers get to... I know when I was working as a developer, the thing I hated the most was, can you move that thing 10 pixels to the left? Because that actually didn't require me to use my brain, it just required me to use my mouse. And as much as possible, I'd much rather be doing the stuff where you're paying me to use my brain.
This feels a lot like when I got my first laser printer in the mid 80s. In other words, this is obviously going to open a whole new world to people, because I don't need to be a flight simulator C++ GDI expert to draw this kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, the fact that basically...
So aren't we going to see some ugly UIs?
Just
like we did with the laser printer, and we saw people...
What's the phrase that we use all the time? With great power comes great responsibility.
Yes.
And we'll rip off from Spider-Man as much as possible, I guess. And if you take a look at some of his early UI, it was pretty ugly. If you take a look at the costumes he had originally, there's going to be a maturing process as people learn what's the right UI to do. I mean, I think that that's definitely the case.
Well, you guys are going to provide some default styles, right?
Yeah, I think
if
so.
You just want what's out of the box. Your stuff will look great.
Yeah, so I think that you'll be able to have stuff out of the box that looks great. You'll also be able to have stuff out of the box that feels new and fun, in interesting ways. But the additional thing is you'll be able to go do, like, where before you had to drop down into, like, the amount of times we dropped down into owner draw to do anything was just huge. Now, anytime that you want to do that, you can use the composition aspects that Pablo was mentioning and use XAML as kind of that interchange format. And you can really start creating some really rich UIs, some really ugly UIs. I mean, heck, if you take a look at the UIs that Rob and I build in our demo apps that originally, before we get a designer looking at them, okay, I'll speak for my apps. Rob's looking at me as though he's a little upset and not criticizing his UI design skills. But I know that I came to Microsoft thinking that I was going to go design UI. I spent 2 weeks here and realized I should never, ever, ever build the exact UI that a customer is going to see, because there are people that do that so much better than I can that's what they should be doing.
So we should jump to the use of 3D, like outside the button. The button effect is great.
It's somewhat gratuitous,
but I want to see how is this going to make.
You guys are cheated, because this is the first time I've seen this. Okay. And this is just, very...
There's some things that get better.
Okay, so let's continue with the demo. I zoomed back out just for everybody, and I'm going to do a search here. So
can you go to the zoom thing in and out? Just
there you go. Ooh, it's we're applying, so the same way, I don't know if you went over transform decorators. We just apply a transform decorator and say to scale by 5x. Using the top corner as the coordinate to scale on.
Now mouse over that CD. It still works the same way?
Exact same way. So as I select out...
So you can see it's totally resolution independent.
Yep. As we
it'll look good on a billboard, because a lot of the billboards, like at the airport, are all running on Windows, and the
you can do some
50 by 200 foot screens on Highway 101 are running on Windows.
So yeah, and the other thing that we did here is kind of adding rich visual polish. Is one of the big things is like letting people know where they are inside their application. So here, as I click between the different sections, so movies gives me a purple color, and you'll notice kind of the rich, smooth transition. Books is blue, games is green, music is red. And we're doing, once again, these are full animations between a set of colors that was all designed by the designer to kind of create that immersive experience. This is, once again, using some of the storyboard features that are new in the March CTP. Before, when we had similar things in demos that we built before, and I think that you guys have seen, that required a bunch of code to be written behind by our developers. One of the big things that we have as we're building demos, and as we see external people building apps, we look through it and say, what is it that they're doing in code and why should they be doing it in code? Is it stuff that should be able to be done in markup? Is it stuff that you're going to want in the end run a graphical design tool to be able to do?
Yeah.
And if the answer is yes, we need to be able to, we're taking a bunch of that feedback and you're seeing a bunch of it here.
And that's really because, code is not a great persistence format for UI, and it really, like Pablo and Enrique was saying, XML, XAML gives you the interchange format to go back and forth beyond. So the number of Windows Forms editors out there are 1, maybe 2. The number of tools we want to be able to go ahead and build graphics and applications here, we'd like it to be dozens of tools that can interchange.
Heck, I mean, even off the November CTP, I think we've seen 2 or 3 of them come out via the community. So, I mean, we're super psyched about it. So let me continue on. I'm going to go do a search here. So I'm going to search for the Beatles. Click on search. We're actually going out to Amazon right now and hoping that the network is alive. We have a nice 3D kind of interstitial effect to give you a richer transition. And then we have just a nice, simple list box. This is just the standard list box that we use in Avalon. That is using control composition in order to be able to have the image and the text available. I've also kind of wired up here a little, I guess, progress bar. I don't know, what do we call these things? A slider. It's a slider that I've hooked up here. And as I go with this slider, you'll notice that additional content gets displayed in the list box, so that you can actually scale all of the content based on how much real estate you have available to you. As I can actually go resize this application and have everything scroll appropriately, and really take advantage of some of the rich layout capabilities that we have. So I can either zoom in or zoom out on it.
So you're just moving this.
Yeah, I'm just moving this slider, and you'll notice behind it that things kind of move in and out. But this is still a regular list box, so I can go flip through here, add items into. So Sgt. Pepper's, that happens to be my favorite album of all time. So let's say I want to buy it now. Now we kind of added in the shopping cart ability here.
And you get this transparency.
Yeah, so once again, our designer went in, Nathan went in and applied a mask to it. You'll notice that the text behind it, if you actually look in here, the text is still visible, but you've got a nice gradient opacity that's being applied there. The other thing that we looked at was how do you make that available between applications, or in this particular case, what do you say if this application was not always running, right? You wanted to have persistence between. So I actually hit a button, not necessarily the right UI for this end run, but now I've got this as a separate application, so I can actually move it around and take a look. I can actually even close off the regular application and now take a look and move it over the desktop, and you'll see the same type of transparency and really rich composition effects available here.
Slide it back over those icons.
Does that look appropriately cool for you?
Do it again.
Okay.
That's
We'll wait. So, and then the other big thing that we look at is how do you integrate all those UI experiences into a single one? So when I click
now,
here,
to get transparency like that, that's just one or two.
actually, I
lines
think
of
that
panel, or-
you did a little bit of it even in yours. It's the first 2
You
characters.
just go set the background, and you. Oh yeah, I did use the pound bad food, but basically you just set opacity, and you can do that in the brush or in the color itself, and you can go ahead and do a linear gradient from this looks like a linear gradient diagonally from transparent to something else.
Or it could be an opacity mask, because it looks like everything else is transparent. So
Okay.
it's probably an opacity mask on the panel.
Yep. So I don't remember exactly what we're using back here, but the other big thing as far as creating more usable experiences is how do you create more integrated experiences? So you've got this as a separate application. The other app ain't running. Hey, I can do Alt-Tab. It's not up and running. Hey, oh, I guess we still have your Visual Studio up from before. How do I get out? Escape. So I can now hit Checkout, and that'll pop me into a full checkout experience within the application.
Now, that
Choose
was
shipping
wicked
address.
fast.
Yeah, so it's loading up the application and that. Perf is improved in this build. It's not where we want it to be yet, but we've definitely made some good progress on it.
So with other development methodologies, when you try to do that, it might take a while to.
Well, people can always. People are pretty darn smart. They work around a lot of those issues. So I would say that we're not supremely better than a lot of the technologies that are out there. I give a lot of credit to the folks in the community. They could build apps that are this quick.
Okay.
I wish we, our hope is that the default behavior when you're creating an application will get you the fastest and the smoothest experience possible. It's really all of these UIs. You could build this today. You could go build this using a DX app or a completely owner-drawn GDI Plus app. Some of the stuff gets a little hairy with that, but you could do it all as a DX app. But nobody would, right? I mean, it's just way too complex. And the way we kind of call about like 3D, before 3D required a math degree. I've actually got a math degree, and the last time I did 3D was my junior year in college, and I went and talked to like Dan Lindenbauer and had him try to explain how the stuff works underneath the covers, and it went all over my head. So it's been...
Karsten, do you have a math degrry? Because I know you've done a lot of 3D things too.
Yeah. I have a math degree and can't do 3D anyway. So I don't know what that says about the school I went to or where that goes, but we'll leave that as it is. So let me close this off again. And then this gives one experience, right? So this is kind of the 2D scaled, hey, how do I move in and out? How do I show more and more information as I go through this?
That scroll bar there?
Yeah.
That we would just went ahead and styled that, just like the list box is styled.
Yep. This is all styled.
So it's up to the control of the developer, or the designer.
Yeah. So the other thing is, from the designer perspective, to have a different look and feel from the slider as you go back and forth required no code by the developer. That was all, hey, this is a UI metaphor. I want to be able to tie the value that I get from the slider to the value to the visibility property on different elements within a list box item, and it kind of all magically happened. That was a last-minute feature request that I think I added in there that Nathan was able to do in a half hour and just say, oh yeah, I don't just drop this new XAML file in the project and we're good to go. So I mean, it showed for us. I mean, we get continually amazed by how much the power of the new kind of model really makes things easier to work with.
And the model here is the code is separate from the content is separate from the design of it, right?
Yep.
So if I'm building this app for, let's say, Best Buy, and then I want to build it for Circuit City, and then I want to build it for orders, it's fairly simple to change the complete look and feel of it.
Yeah, look and feel you'll be able to change radically. In fact, let's jump in with a completely different look and feel that we've put on top of this. We thought a little bit, hey, you want to zoom in on the screen again. I'm going to swap this into a full screen 3D mode now. Okay. So the view here was, hey, a version that is a little bit more accessible from what we call a 10-foot UI. So if you were looking at it on a projector or on a media center device, it actually, I don't have a remote control hooked up to this machine here, but you could do everything via remote control. This is still, let me actually select, it's a little choppy, but as I go through, this is just, once again, a stylized list box. So this is actually a list box 3D. This entire application, we're working on actually adding a few comments into the code and then releasing it publicly. This is all running on the March CTP bits. So if you take a look here, I can flip through all the different articles. Tax season is coming up, so I can take a look for, I don't remember which album it is that has Taxman on it. Really interact with things the same way I would with a CD. So as I flip between the back of the case and the front of the case, get kind of the same reaction that I do in a
now we're running on Windows XP here, right?
Yeah, I'm running. This is standard Windows XP.
This is not Longhorn.
No, this is not Longhorn. This is using hardware acceleration on any DX9 compatible card. We're really getting some rich experiences here. It will run on Windows XP. It will also run on Windows Server 2003. For those of you who are running Server 2003, I keep getting in trouble for forgetting to mention them. But yeah, it includes all of them. So Revolver, also voted as one of the 10 best albums of all time, has Taxman on it. We can say buy it now and once again get the full gradient effect and that across everything. So this kind of gives you a little bit of the experience that we think that you'll be able to provide with Avalon. You can argue with me about whether this is the most usable UI or the best UI. We're looking forward to seeing what types of UIs people can build with it, because it's going to be, for us, we're continually amazed at like what people are able to build and how quickly they're able to build it. So hopefully this gives you an idea of a little bit of what's possible with the March CTP bits, both from the ease of the programming model and then some of the graphical richness that you can have in the end run. We're pretty excited with the stuff that you can do here. So,
so Rick, since it's March,
yep.
who do we predict is going to make the finals?
The Final Four. So my Final Four bracket is totally hosed. This weekend was absolutely miserable for that. Just to give people, it was pretty ugly.
Now, is there an inside joke here? Or
No, he knows that I was complaining all day. We were in meetings all day Thursday, I think it was, and I was complaining about. I think I was griping the entire day about how I wasn't able to watch the games. I got in trouble in a couple meetings because I kept having ESPN.com up in the background and trying to follow what was happening. I'm a huge basketball nut, so here in Seattle, there's definitely a lot of hope now that two of the other top seeds in the Albuquerque bracket. I'm going to go against that and call it the West bracket. So UW is still alive. I know that you're a big Texas Tech fan. That eliminated Gonzaga this weekend. So it'll be interesting to see what happens on, I guess it would be Saturday. If both UW and Texas Tech win, then you might be in the vast minority here in the Seattle area.
And Michigan's not even in it right now, so I'm just kind of snoozing.
And I'm very happy about that. So, I was born on campus at Ohio State. We argue back and forth. It's more football season that's arguing back and forth. But Illinois, I think Illinois still looks good.
Florida win this week?
No, Florida lost to who was it? Villanova.
Yeah.
So UConn lost.
They might watch this and they know who actually has won.
Yeah, this is probably going to be.
Yeah, we're going to know if your predictions are right or not.
So my wife will kill me if I don't pick UW. So I'm going to pick UW. University of Washington for anybody outside the Seattle area that doesn't understand that. I like North Carolina. I actually don't think they're that good, but I don't think that there's anybody left in their bracket that can beat them. I don't have the bracket in my. I have pretty close to the bracket in my head. I like Illinois, even though they've been a little bit shaky. Yeah, they had a little bit more trouble in the first round than that I would have hoped with Farley Dickinson. I like when the small schools give a chance to give a bit of a run for there. I'm still probably picking Illinois over North Carolina in the final game, but that's a cop out. That's the top two teams probably of the
Very cool.
of the thing. But I'll cop out.
Do you guys have, since you guys are all really big gods of the Avalon world, do you have 3 tips for people who are just getting into the Avalon world?
Just start playing. Start. I think the first thing is start writing some XAML and see how easy it is to do, because it's pretty straightforward on where you can go with that. The other thing is, come up with UIs. Think about where you have so far struggled with UI. I think that when I look at it, one of the big things for me is every time that a developer told me that was going to be too hard, or that was something that they couldn't get done in time, that's the UI I want to go see how long it takes me to build now in Avalon. Because if we haven't done a better job making that a much more efficient process, then I think we're going to look at this release as a failure.
I would even, one thing that I do tell folks when they're thinking about their Avalon plans is, even if you think you're only going to move to Avalon 3 or 5 years from now, perhaps the market you're in, people don't move to new OSs or new platforms that fast. Even if you're thinking of only moving to Avalon 3 years from now, go ahead and spend a month or 2 now evaluating whether Avalon has the features and functionality that you want, so that you can provide us with feedback, so that when you go to build on it 3 years from now, it actually has the right features and the right functionality that you will need then. Because if you only try it 3 years from now, you'll have to wait until we make another release with fixes or new functionality that you will need. So set aside some time, perhaps a month, perhaps 2 months, do some prototyping, try things out, and then provide feedback, and just satisfy yourself that when you want to move to the platform, when you do your 3, 5 year, 8-year plan, when you want to move to the platform, you'll have the features that you need and the performance.
I think the one other thing I would call out is let us know what's the type of sample applications that you need in order to be able to do it quicker. The SDK folks down the hall are frantically working to keep up with us on creating samples and stuff. We're going to try to take this app that you saw here and make it available as a sample as soon as we can. We're going to try to continue to make some more of these richer, fuller, functional apps as samples out there for the community. as starting points. So hopefully you can look and see, oh my God, you guys did that code really stupidly, or that's really smart, and that's the way that we can really take advantage of that moving forward.
And as you go ahead and start building applications, tell us where we've messed up. There's a bunch of things that we've made easier, but we still have usability problems, but we still have time to fix it. So we're interested in seeing what you can build. There's been a lot of great people building chess games and other games and real applications. Love to see those applications. Love to take a look to see how you've approached the platform, how you've approached the new features and taken advantage of them. And it gives us a good idea of how we fix the SDK to make sure people go the right direction, or just opens our eyes to
and I would say
tell people.
The interesting thing about that is, don't only tell us what you weren't able to do, tell us what was hard to do.
And
tell us
what you tried to do.
Yeah, and where you struggled and where you had problems. Because for us, a lot of the stuff, yeah, you can work around an awful lot of issues and an awful lot of platforms. Yeah. But darn, we really hope that the default behavior that people are going to go down and their first thought process on any one of these is going to lead them down the right behavior. I mean, I know that's what you spend a huge amount of your time thinking about, and the you is Rob in this case, for those of you off screen. But for us, let us know what was hard, what didn't make sense. We got, I hope, a lot of smart people working on it. I know that most of the people working on it are a heck of a lot smarter than I am, so I feel pretty confident about their ability to get it out. But the more people we have, the more eyes we have looking on it, the better chance that we have a great story for when we ship V1. We're super excited to get that.
Can't wait to see what the rest of the stuff your team does, because this is just amazing stuff.
We should have another one of these when we do the next CTP, and we can go show you all the cool new stuff that will come for that one.
Okay.
So more to come.
Yep.
And you guys will all be at the PDC as well, right?
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we'll be running around. We're trying to convince Rob to post where he's going to be at any point in time at the PDC, so people can find.
I just met with another dev who has an app for you.
I heard that.
You put your app, this app on your smartphone, and everybody can go to a web page and look at where you are.
Sounds a little scary.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to seeing.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was great.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.